Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude and the M41 Walker Bulldog by Tamiya in 1/35 scale. Kind of a somewhat beginner project, or not beginner project, but a project for the beginner series. And I think at some point I'm going to have to change the series from beginners to intermediates or advanced or something. But the Walker Bulldog has been painted, as you know. I used, just to refresh your memory, olive drab XF62 by Tamiya. For the main color, I used XF69, which is NATO black. For the tire portions of the return rollers and the road wheels, and I have put a coat of Future on there. These little small Tamiya, or not Tamiya, Vallejo surface primer bottles work great once they're empty for using other fluids, in this case the Future. So I've got it all clear coated, and I'm going to let it cure up really good, take a look and make sure I got good coverage. As you can see, it's not real super shiny, which I didn't really want a real shiny coat on it. It's kind of shiny in some spots, but I'm just shooting more as a sealer and to give a surface that the washes will flow better on, because the Tamiya paint is really super flat, and it just doesn't lend itself well to oil washes. I mean, at least I don't have much luck in using them and having it, you know, capillary action pulling it along seams and raised detail and so forth. So that's why I like to put a coat of Future on it. Plus it seals the decals in, of which they are not really decals, they are Archer dry transfers. And I have talked about those before, and I really like them for subjects like this, especially where there's no surface detail. It's just a matter of rubbing them on, and they work really well. Excuse me. They're ultra thin, they stick really well, and once you clear coat them, they stick real good. And then when you weather, they weather really well, and you don't end up with the raised edge like you would with the Tamiya decals, which are kind of thick. So anyway, got it clear coated. Gonna let this cure up, and then we'll come back and start working on some of the weathering process. Alright, welcome back. Just wanted to add a little addendum here. Don't mind the mayhem and carnage that you might hear in the background. My son is playing a game on the computer and destroying opponents, so don't worry about it. Everything's good here in my neck of the woods. But I just wanted to say real quick, like, that I need to prime the tracks. I almost forgot, and I will be using for this the black Stynylrez primer. So I'm going to mix this up real good, get these primed up, and come back. Alright, so the clear coat has dried properly, and I'm going to start working on doing a pin wash on the kit using some ivory black, heavily diluted with odorless paint thinner from the local hobby / art store. So in past beginner videos, I've used pretty much exclusively acrylic products such as Vallejo Model Wash. Okay, so that's what I've used in the past. Now I am using something different. Like I said, this is an experiment, and I have found that in this case in my case, I'm getting better results with the Artist Oil colors, and here's the reason why. It seems to travel around the parts I'm trying to highlight a little better than the acrylic does. Like if I touch it to you know, the edge of the rim, it seems to spread a little better, and it just flows much better. This wheel's been done, this one hasn't. Let's zoom in here. Hopefully you can see the difference. The one on the left is kind of shiny because of my lighting, but hopefully you can see the black deposited around the edges and around the bolts and everything. And it doesn't seem to get tide marks as easily. And what tide marks are is whenever if you put something down and as it spreads out, you get so far and then stops due to surface tension. And with the acrylics, it just seems like the edge, you know, you get this nice dark line along the edge. And I say nice in a sarcastic way. You don't want it to look like that. You want it to blend a little bit better. If you end up with tide marks with oils, it's very easy to remove those with a odorless thinner dampened brush. You can scrub those off so you get a nice effect without it, you know, leaving a harsh line. So just to give a quick demonstration here, zoom in again. Oops. Okay, all I'm doing is I'm making sure every time I stick the brush in, I make sure it is stirred up so, you know, the pigment doesn't settle in the thinner. I am using a separate set of brushes like I have in the past. I have some wash brushes, I have pigment brushes, and then I have paint brushes, and I don't mix those up because I don't want to ruin my good brushes doing this kind of stuff. So hopefully you can see here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I just touch my brush right here and it travels around the detail. Touch the brush there, it just zoomed around that inside ridge by the hub. So what it does, and I've mentioned this in the beginning videos, I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, so that's my only disclaimer, so just bear with me. It gives you some contrast between recessed detail and surface detail. Okay, touch it around the bolts, same thing, you're going to get a nice little... And keep in mind, if it turns out kind of harsh, especially in areas like this, it's going to be covered with dust and dirt and everything too. So all this stuff comes together as you progress through the weathering stages. Touch it right inside there and you see it just spin around. Now you can do this without a clear coat. This is an experiment with using a clear coat. The last kit I did not use a clear coat. And I just want to see how this reacts. It might be better without, it might be better with, so we will see. See, I just turn that and it just rolls right around the edge. So it works really well. Same thing there, just touch it to the edge and it'll just, it's just a very faint line of it just traveling around the edge. Now, I also, another one of my disclaimers, this is not a method I came up with. You'll find this on a lot of different places. Sequence, some people use a little different, but it's all basically the same thing. So that's what the wheels are going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the wheels. and then I'll come back and we'll look at some more of the other parts. Alright, the wheels, drive sprockets, idlers, everything is done as far as that goes. So now it's time to move on to the actual tank itself, the vehicle, main hull, and it's going to be the same thing. Highlighting around the details. Just like this. So all of the detail type stuff, most of it anyway, I'm going to be doing, especially on the lower surfaces. Just to give it a bit of contrast. Otherwise it just looks kind of flat. Just helps the details to kind of pop out a bit. Alright, so that's what I'm doing here. Any of this kind of stuff that like bleeds over and looks kind of funky, that will be dealt with later in additional weathering steps. So I'm going to go around the tank getting details like that, and go around the whole vehicle, come back. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do for the weathering after the wash is I'm going to start working on the wheels and underneath where it's going to be the dirtiest. So I'm going to do that first. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the wheels. Now the wheels, the idler wheels on these are all metal. There's no rubber on them. So I need to, I want to simulate a worn down to the bare metal finish on here from, you know, running on the tracks. So what I am using for that is just a regular number 2 pencil, and here's what I'm doing. I am kind of holding the pencil, you know, to where the graphite is flat, and I'm just scrubbing it across like this. By keeping it flat, I keep it from bleeding off down inside there like, you know, I could possibly do with paint. And I'm just going to go all the way around both sides and end up with this. Okay, easy way to do it. Everybody's got pencils. Number 2s work just dandy. So I'm going to work on that for a little bit and then move on to the wheels. Alright, I've already started weathering on the turret a little bit. As you can see, I've sprayed the NATO black on the tracks. I'm letting that cure really well. But I've started working on the turret, and one of the methods that I am trying here, and I may not be doing it like everybody else does it, I'm experimenting here, but this is by no means my own method. I've been watching YouTube videos and tutorials and everything else, and I've probably overdone it because you can like overload your brain on this kind of stuff, so I'm trying to back off and just work on it. But what I'm doing is I'm trying some oil dot weathering. Okay, and basically what that is, and again, this is not my thing. I have not come up with this on my own. You need, I have a couple of things of thinner here. Not thinner, yeah, odorless paint thinner, Masterpiece from Hobby Lobby. It's totally odorless. The reason I'm using it because, you know, I'm weird about stinky stuff in the house. And then I've got me a few brushes here. I'm mainly using this brush here, which is a number 2. It's a Colibri Echt Roodmarder 333 from Germany. I probably butchered all that. But that's what I'm using to apply the dot, and I'm also going to try using a toothpick / cocktail stick, and then I'm using this to actually kind of blend it together. And basically the way it works, and there's all kinds of different colors and combinations you can use. I am mainly using yellow ochre, white, which is no, it's ivory black. That's the wrong one. Oh, here it is. Titanium white, and then I'm also using, you know, there's the yellow ochre, and then burnt umber. And you know, I put it on a piece of cardboard to leach out all the linseed oil, as everybody says you should do, and makes sense because it keeps it from being too runny. And then just moisten the brush a little bit, just to get it, you know, damp. And then I'm going to do, and you should work in small sections. As you can see, I've got some stuff going on here. I've already done this part and the mantlet, and I've done the sides and the back of the storage bin. So you can kind of see the effect that you can get. You can see this is a little duller, a little more splotchy, so it has kind of a dusty look to it, as opposed to this nice clean olive drab color. So I'm going to try and keep it in frame here. But take your brush, and then you just take, if your paint, it can be sitting on here for a few days, and the nature of oil paint, it takes a very long time for it to dry. You can just scrape some of the top skin off to get down to the soft material. Okay, now what I've been doing, and again, this may be wrong, I don't know, but the way I'm doing this is with the burnt umber, I'm using that more underneath the edges where it should be darker due to shadow. You know, again, that's my own concoction there. I don't know if people do that. This is all experimental stuff, and we'll see how it looks at the end. But you can take your brush, okay, just get a very little bit of the paint and just do dots. And you kind of got to figure out how much to do per section that you're working on. I'm just going to do this hatch here. So I got the white, cleaning that off my brush, getting most of the thinner out because you don't want anything puddling up. Then I'm going to get some of the yellow ochre, put a couple of dots of that. Just depends on the effect you want to get. I've heard that yellow ochre is a good color to use on olive drab if you're wanting to brighten it up just a little bit, give it a little bit more of a, not such a dark color, and it would depend on your base color. But you put that on there like that, and then clean that brush off, and then I'm going to take this stubby little blending brush and clean thinner, and then I'm going to get as much of the thinner out as possible. You just want it kind of moist because you don't want to take too much of this color off. And then I'm just going to use it and basically start scrubbing this in. And I'm using kind of a circular pattern, and other people don't do it this way. Some people do use a stroke type pattern, which is actually kind of better on the sides of the tank because it gives it more of a streaky effect. And you can even come in and do a streakier effect later on. Now, as you can see, I may have put too much paint on here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that brush off. Then I'm going to use that brush. I'm going to scrub some more and get some of that off of there. because I don't want it to be like a real stark contrast to the rest of the top. See, as you can see, it's made it kind of dusty. And this is my own observation here, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm doing this wrong, or maybe I do dry brushing wrong, but see, it's kind of made that a little pale. And by alternating, the way you scrub and stuff like that, it's already starting to dry where it's a little bit lighter here and there. It gives it just more variation in the surface color of the part that you're trying to do. And basically it looks like some people use a dry brush method with even just regular hobby enamels, like say Humbrol for some, or Testers, Model Master, whatever, enamel paints. You kind of get the same effect, but with the enamels, anytime I've used enamels for dry brushing, I've discovered that if I'm not really careful, I can smudge it and it just ends up looking like just smudgy stuff. I think you might have a little bit more control doing it with this what's called a dot filter method, if I'm even doing it right. So those of you who do this a lot and you may be looking at me like I'm some kind of clown, that's fine, because again, this is experimental. First time I've ever done it, and I really need to figure out, how it's going to work best. So another way you can apply it is with a toothpick, and I'm going to do it on this part right here. Now I'm going to do it on this hatch. Again, you're just taking little dots of it. I'm not going to put quite as much as I did on that other hatch, and then I shouldn't have to take any off, and it doesn't take much. And I suppose you could really use the different colors to your advantage and get you like almost a modulation technique, like say on the upper surfaces, on the large flat surfaces, and the raised surfaces use mostly white with a little bit of yellow, and then maybe on the lower surfaces, like say around where the turret would be, just maybe use a little bit more yellow, and then for lower sections, maybe use a little bit more of the burnt umber with these other colors, and you could get kind of more of a shadowy effect. So you could get some like variation in colors on the whole thing. And I don't know, so far, I mean, what I did on the side here, I like how that turned out. It dirties up the stars a little bit, so they're not quite so clean and white looking. So it's just something you got to experiment with and see what you can do. So let's do this here. Some people use a little bit wetter method than I'm doing. I'm trying to kind of scrub it on, like I said, almost like a dry brush kind of thing. Like that. It's not really that difficult. And as you can see, kind of a little smudgy looking and a little dusty looking, and it tones down that green, that olive drab somewhat. So that's how I'm doing this. So I'm going to work some more on this turret, and I'm going to get it done. And be careful, watch out, like right there, I got some stinking fingerprints. So I'm going to use this thing to kind of rub those fingerprints out. So it might even be a good idea to be wearing a glove while doing this, so whenever I hold parts of it, it doesn't leave fingerprints. So I'm going to work a little bit more on this, and once I get this done, I'll come back and let you see what I've done. Alright, so I'll be back in a minute. Alright, a quick note, done a little bit more, and as you can see here, I used a little bit more of the yellow ochre, as opposed to titanium white, where there was more white on this part, so you can see there's a little bit difference in shade. Now it might be a little bit stark right now, that this is so much different than that, and this as well. But once I get this done and I do some more light dusting with say the airbrush using a buff color of some kind, it's going to help kind of tone that down a little bit. Yet it'll, you know, it'll be thin enough that it'll kind of bring everything together, hopefully, but yet retain a little bit of variation so it doesn't look all monotone, or monochromatic I should say. So let me work some more on this and I'll come back. Alright, so the turret is pretty much done as far as the dot filter goes. And as you can see, it's made it kind of smudgy, kind of weathery looking, and you know, I don't know, looks pretty good. Not bad for my first time doing this, I guess. It's gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be, you know, lots of practice. Take me quite a few models probably before I get it the way I want it, but you know, it looks decent. And again, this is just for the first stage of the weathering that I'm going to be doing on this. So the turret is done, so I am going to clean up all my stuff here and begin working on the hull. But as far as this part of the video, I'm going to call it done. So I'm basically going to do the same exact technique on the upper surfaces, the front and back of the hull, but I'm also going to be adding some other weathering techniques on the lower hull. So I'm going to call this done for now, this part, and I'm going to end the video here. So if you have any questions, comments, and most importantly any suggestions, please put them in the comments below, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So for Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the somewhat beginner project, experimental weathering, modeling for beginners, that's it for today. So I will see you all next time.